Welcome everybody to the DCS Sales Orientation. Here with Mike Arpey, Sales Manager and Sales Coach here at DCS. Today we have a series of videos that are going to help you and show you the way that we suggest that you close business and the steps to follow in order to do so.
Absolutely. Hi everybody out there, my name is Mike. I play many roles here at DCS. Dago Cleaning Systems is one of those companies that as you're starting to grow with now, you'll see that by the time you end your career here, it'll be a very different place than where you started. The old adage comes into play that nothing happens until somebody sells something. That's where we're at here at DCS, and make no mistake about it, Dago Cleaning Systems is no different than any other business out there. It is up to you, it is up to me, and everybody else that wears the moniker of sales for any organization to grow the market share. That is our focus, that will be our only focus, that is our only report card. As you know from working within other organizations, that the sales team sort of operates on a little bit of a different level than some of the other departments within an organization. Here at DCS, that won't be any different. As we get into the process, it might be something different than what you're used to, depending on where you're coming from. Some of the ideas may be a little bit different, again, depending on where you're coming from and what your training has consisted of as a salesperson up until this point. Having said that, the process that we're going to lay out today is the process that DCS will follow. It will become the chosen salesperson's responsibility to fall within that process and execute against the plan. So before we get into this, I'd like to take a moment and say congratulations and welcome aboard, and we're looking forward to growing the company together. As we get started into the process, the very first thing that we want to talk about is identifying a need from the potential client. Now what that means is necessarily that you're going to uncover what their actual needs are. We have a janitorial service, we have a carpet care service, we can do hard floors, we have multiple prongs that we can sell at any given meeting. So while you're out there, it's very, very important to ask a lot of questions and to make sure that you're uncovering exactly what the customer needs. For example, if the customer really needs a carpet cleaned, it doesn't make any sense for you to spend an hour with the principal of that organization trying to sell them a janitorial service that they don't feel they need. So be very cognizant about that and make sure that we're addressing the customer's needs, especially at the onset of the first appointment. That is so, so important. Sometimes if you've been in sales for a while, you're going to find that like many other people, you can go out there, you can build a relationship quickly, you can gain trust quickly, and you can close the deal quickly. Sometimes that's not going to be the case, and you have to work at it for a little while and sort of prove it point by point. Having said that, we want to make sure that we don't miss any opportunities by going in and trying to sell one service and then missing out on the opportunity to sell other services. This takes business away from DCS, and frankly, it takes money out of your pocket. If you're watching this video, you're already aware of what your compensation structure is and how you're paid. And obviously, we pay for growth. So, that being the case, it would be a shame for you to work as hard as you work to book an appointment and get in front of that decision maker and then not get the deal because we didn't pitch the right service at the right time. So very much a part of your scope of responsibility here at DCS is uncovering that need and then exploiting the opportunity for us to fulfill that need for that customer. At this point in time, I think it probably makes sense to maybe stop, have an internal discussion, and then and talk about what that really means and how you would go about obtaining that information from the client.
Absolutely, and that's to flip it, to the other side of things as well. You as a salesperson, obviously, your time is very valuable. So we want to make sure that we're focusing, or you're focusing that time and spending that time with people that are actually going to buy the service.
Absolutely. As a salesperson, your time is the most valuable commodity that you have. And you really want to make sure that you're spending that time uncovering business that's going to be advantageous for both you within your role and advantageous for DCS in terms of growth within the community.
Excellent. So the second thing, this will transition us into the second point that we want to talk about Once you identify what your prospect needs or what their potential needs are, you want to move to the second piece of analyzing this, and are they currently with a service provider? Are they willing to do something differently than they have in the past? All in all, do they have a willingness to change and do something different? How do we identify that from the beginning, so we know whether or not we're even going to be able to close a deal with that prospect?
That's a great question. The willingness to change on the portion of the prospect that you're talking to is going to be paramount in your ability to gain that decision. Sometimes what you'll find is in sales, as you're aware, everything is about relationships, relationships, relationships. So if you're walking into, let's say you're walking into ABC company and you want to pitch them DCS as their janitorial service. Well, if you don't find out everything you need to find out up until that point, what if you find out that the principal of that company, his best friend, started a janitorial service and that's who's servicing that account? Now, these two individuals go back 25 years. They've been great pals. Do you think that you're going to have the ability to sway that decision? I would say maybe. I don't want to tell you that you can't. But what I will tell you is that you're going to want to be very, very, very careful with that individual to not rub them the wrong way to where they feel like they have to defend the person that is the incumbent provider. And what happens there is now you become sort of pushed to the outside as you're trying to find your way in. So if we take a step back and we identify the need, by need, really what we're talking about is pain. What is their pain? If you can find their pain, then you can advance to the next level of this, which is identifying their willingness to change. Sometimes people don't know what they don't know. You don't know how to change. You're not comfortable with change. You know you need to do something, but you're not sure how to go about it. At that point in time, as the salesperson for DCS, your role becomes very much that of the consultant. And that's sort of how we want you to think about your position here. We are going to make you an expert in this field, and then it is your job to take those expertise out into the field and become a problem solver for your prospects. Now, in terms of dealing with the willingness to change, sometimes in addition, you're going to find to that person that has his buddy for 20 years running the janitorial company that's doing their service, you're not going to impact that. Other side to the coin to that is sometimes you're going to find the individual who's in so much pain that they want to make a move now. You think that's a great sale, but it's not. Pump the brakes, take a step back, make sure that you're addressing the need, the actual intellectual need, and not just dealing with the emotions of the situation. I'll give you a great example. If you're sitting home and your dog is continually peeing on your carpet, and now you've had enough, and then you say, you know what, in a fit of rage, you just get rid of the dog. And then 24 hours later, you're sitting home and you really miss your dog. You're starting to think, geez, I could have trained him better, I could have done this better, I could have done that better. Now you're second guessing yourself. The reason why that takes place is because you made an emotional decision. Be aware of prospects that will make an emotional decision, because more often than not, the deal that they structure with you at that meeting is not going to be what the deal ends up being at the end of the rainbow, if that makes sense. As they start to have remorse, as they start putting an intellectual value on the decision that they made when they're no longer in an emotional state, oftentimes you find that needle change and they start to backpedal a little bit. Find out if that's the case in the beginning, because if you do, as they're going through that changeover from the emotional decision to the intellectual decision, it will give you the opportunity to be the person that they're calling to make sure that they're thinking properly. That will be huge for you. Again, there's a big difference between being the consultant and being the salesman. If you're the salesman, think about when you buy a car. You don't ever think about that salesperson again until there's a problem with the car, and then you call the salesperson. It's not going to be any different with your prospect that made an emotional decision. They're going to hold you responsible if you're the salesman for that decision because you forced me to make that decision. I'm never going to own it on my own. But if you're following our process, when you get to this point of an emotional decision, you've uncovered the information that you needed to uncover. You recognize that the individual is making an emotional decision, and now that you're armed with that information, you can be the person that helps them slow down and think things through. Now you become that person's go-to. You're no longer a vendor. You're on the inside in terms of that individual's thinking when it comes to their building and their building maintenance.
So I want to just take a step back, Mike, and get back to or talk a little bit about, and we see it all the time, especially in the residential side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody has been with their current vendor for 15, 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Are they going to actually be willing to make a move or make a change? It's something that we have to assess pretty quickly. However, in certain instances, that company that's currently servicing their needs may not provide the same array of services that we do. So, even if it's a block or, they're not willing to change on one aspect of the service that's being provided, there may be other opportunities because that company they're currently with doesn't do carpet cleaning. They don't do VCT, floor care maintenance, and there may be other opportunities to address the problems that they're facing.
Absolutely. I think that comes back to the beginning of our video and identifying what the real needs are. It's important that you get a three-dimensional working knowledge of what that customer is looking for before you take it to the next step. Now, Derek, using your example in terms of the individual who's got a cleaning company in their home for X amount of time, here's what I think. I think the fact that we're having that conversation, that they've called us, that they've picked up the phone and we're there talking to them, would suggest that they have a willingness to change. That doesn't mean that they're going to. And I think we want to make that distinction. I think that's very, very important. Again, sometimes it's just somebody frustrated with their current provider who's been in their home for a long time. They're mad because they left the refrigerator open or they left the back door open or something along those lines, and they make that emotional call immediately. Through your conversation, you'll notice it if that person really isn't serious. Their body language is going to change, their tone is going to change, they're going to become disinterested. Fortunately, here at DCS, you as the new salesperson are going to have the opportunity to start understanding different individual personality profiles. You'll understand how to read body language, and you'll understand how to read an individual's tone as to how they're talking to you to gauge what their real interest level is. Again, and the willingness to change piece. If you're talking to them, we have to assume there's at least a small percentage there, but that's not a guarantee. Just because they picked up the phone and called us doesn't mean that they didn't pick up the phone and call 35 other people. You're still very much up against the incumbent, and you're still very much up against the unknown factors in your equation, which could very well be, hey, I'm meeting with you from 3 to 3:30, and then as soon as you walk out the door, Jan Pro is coming in, and then as soon as Jan Pro leaves, UniFirst is coming in, and then as soon as UniFirst leaves, then I'm going to have the mom and pop guy down the street with a pickup truck and a side-by-side coming in to talk to me about my floors or what have you, whatever the situation may be. So steps 1 and 2 of this, I think you can find out relatively quickly, and I think what you'll find is that during that information profile piece of the first portion, which is finding out what the actual need is, will be a very key indicator to what the second step here is, which is the willingness to change. It's very important that you as the salesperson during these steps are not emotionally involved. You can't be having a conversation in your head at the same time you're talking to your prospect. If that happens, your division, your attention is split, you're divided within your own realm. So how can you possibly address 100% of that customer's needs and concerns if you're not even 100% in the conversation? You have to be very careful about that as the process starts, especially in the first 15 to 20 minutes of sitting with a prospect. It's going to tell you everything. And it's going to tell that prospect everything about you. Perception-wise, you're going to hear this phrase a million times here at DCS. Perception is reality. So whatever that individual's perception of you is what their reality is. They may be willing to make a change. They may not be willing to make a change with you. You've got to keep your antenna up for that. Hi, and welcome back to the next segment of the Daigle Cleaning System sales training video. Once again, my name is Mike. I am the sales manager and operations point person for DCS. As we get back into it, we're going to start talking about budgets. Now, when you think about how you would buy something, the first thing that you do is take a look at how much you can spend on the product, regardless of what it is or service, and decide whether that holds value to you enough to spend set amount of money. That buying decision is going to be no different for your clients. Your clients are going to look at your proposals. It's always going to come back down to the dollars and cents. Now, when we talk about budgets and dollars and cents, the first thing most salespeople think about is having to be the least expensive guy out there. At DCS, we're not looking to be the cheapest guy in the marketplace. We don't want to be the cheapest guy in the marketplace simply for the simple fact that we do better work than most folks around here. We know that because we have a team of supervisors that are in the field constantly checking accounts, fulfilling the promises that you as the salesperson are going to make to your future clients. So when it comes to the budget, things to think about are quality, things to think about are pain. The only reason you as the salesperson are there when there's an incumbent vendor already on site is because that incumbent vendor has done something or said something or not done or not said something to the client that has created a painful situation for the client, and now the client is looking to make a change. When you look at the industry averages in terms of what most people are getting paid out there for this type of industry, it's always going to be somewhere between $21 and $25 per hour. Now, does that mean that you go out and start at $25? The answer is no. The first thing you want to find out is what is your client's budget. By finding that out, this does two things for you. One is it gets the client comfortable enough to talk about money with you. Two, it also tells you whether that client can really afford your services or whether they can't. As a salesperson, the worst thing that you can do is spend all kinds of time with a client trying to structure a deal, only to find out at the end of the day that the client truly can't afford your products or services. You've essentially wasted all of your time, you've wasted your employer's time, and you've wasted the potential client's time. You want to avoid this, and the best way to avoid this is by having an honest conversation about the financials up front before you get into putting out proposals, so on and so forth. A lot of times your clients are going to be hesitant to give you a number to work with because they've seen and dealt with salespeople before. Therefore, when asking about the budget, you've got to be positioned in a way to where you are working with them, not for them. That you're a partner in solving their issues, not necessarily someone that they're going to pay for a service. The best way to do that is to make sure that you're building proper relationships with your clients. If your relationships, as we discussed earlier in the video, if your relationships are what they need to be, your client's not going to have a problem discussing what the budget is with you. If your client does have a problem discussing a budget with you, you should probably take a step back and consider the fact that your relationship might not be as strong as what you think your relationship is. Remember, perception is reality. Sometimes you're going to run into people that are what we call steady relators and cautious thinkers, and they're very much driven by details. Those individuals are going to be hesitant to make a decision. They're going to be difficult to build relationships with, and they're always going to be thinking the next move ahead, which means giving you a budget is sometimes going to be difficult. Ways to overcome that. Find out pain. What issues have they had with their previous vendors? Why are you there? What is it you're there to fix? It's never about just sweeping a floor. It's never about just wiping a counter off. It's always about something or someone within the previous organization that has caused a level of discomfort that they now start to try to justify the expenditure of what they're paying versus the service that they're getting. And these are the things you have to be thinking about as you start to discuss budget.
Budget can be the most powerful tool that you can use as a salesperson to obtain an account. The reason why I say that is if a customer tells you that I've got $10,000 a year to devote towards my cleaning and janitorial services, you as the salesperson know that when you go back to do your proposal to them, that $10,000 is really the cap. Sometimes you're going to have conversations with your client about the amount of money they want to spend that they think they need to spend versus what they really need to spend to fix their problem. So again, using the same example, if that individual is telling you that they're, and again, using round numbers because I'm not real bright, if that individual is telling you that they have $10,000 to spend, but you know to fix the issues that you need to fix for them, you're really looking at $12,500 to $13,000. You've got to have a strong enough relationship with that prospect to be able to have that conversation and have it not be a sort of a deal breaker. That's the way you have to look at it. It's not always going to be easy. It's not always going to be laid down in front of you. This is where the sort of average salesperson from the elite begin to separate themselves. The budget is one of the most important conversations that you're going to have. It's important for the company that you're working for. It's important for the prospect you're going to be working with. Both of those individuals have a need. The company needs to make money. Sometimes your prospects don't always understand why your company needs to have a profit margin. There are people out there who do purchasing in a manner in which they don't want you as the salesperson to make any money. They don't want DCS to make money. They want to pay bottom of the barrel, and then here's what you will find, and I promise you this will be true 8 out of 10 times. Those individuals who want to give you the bottom dollar for your services will become the biggest pains in your backside down the road because they're the ones who are going to expect the most and spend the least. So as you're talking about budget, you have two huge criteria pieces to cover. One is the relationship. Make sure it's there. 2, expectation. Make sure you're managing your client's expectation based on the amount of money that they want to spend based on the service that you can provide. So for example, if a client's going to spend $10,000 with you, but then you decide because you're a very amicable salesperson that you're going to commit DCS to cleaning all the carpets or something above and beyond what would be standard janitorial work, the moment that you promise that, DCS now has to fulfill that promise in order for us to maintain our relationship with the client. Those two things you have to balance very, very well. It takes time, it takes training, it takes a lot of failure. You're gonna fail, and that's okay. You're gonna get out there, you're gonna fall down, and that's okay. When you do, I want you to come back to this video, and I want you to remember the 2 things that are most important when it comes to discussing a budget. One is gonna be the relationship, and the other is always gonna be the justification piece. If you can put those 2 together, that makes sense to your client, putting it in their terms, not yours, you'll win more than you lose. Hi, welcome back to the sales training video for Daigle Cleaning Systems. As we've covered the first few steps, we're going to get into expectations of your client. Most times your client will be the one to set the expectation with you in terms of not only specifications for what it's going to take to complete said project or account, but also mannerisms in terms of how do they expect your employees to be? How do they expect them to dress and act? How do they expect the work to be performed? What parameters do they want the work to be performed in? And what would they like you to use? A lot of times we don't get into that because we tend to have our own systems and processes internally that we forget that our clients are also going to have their own systems and processes internally. There may be certain times a day where you can't run a vacuum. There may be certain times a day that you can't use certain chemicals because you're going to have sensitive people in the office space or within the building space that you're going to be processing. Understand when it comes to chemical sensitivity, the simple facts of the matter is out there's about 3% of the human population that are truly chemically sensitive. However, keeping that in mind, psychosomatic symptoms, i.e. your mind making you think that you're having symptoms, can be just as powerful as the actual symptom itself. So when you find somebody who may not necessarily be chemically sensitive, but has all the psychosomatic symptoms of being chemically sensitive because they talk themselves into being chemically sensitive, you've got to treat that with the same kid gloves as you would an individual who is truly chemically sensitive. Why is that diatribe so important to expectations? Well, nothing can sink your ship faster than a displeased employee who is on the clock, who is working directly with the decision maker who's going to make the decision as to whether you're going to be their vendor or not. These people work together 8 to 10 hours a day, all day, every day, just like yourself and your coworkers. So when you put that into that context, you've really got to make sure that the expectation between yourself and the client covers all of the needs. This is an introspective conversation that you can't just rush through. You yourself, as the service provider, should have a lot of questions. You should have a lot of insight as well. And what I mean by that is you're going to have experiences with other individuals that you've dealt business with in the past that certain instances have popped up before that you have experience in abating. However, that the adverse can also be true, that you're going to find yourself in situations and trying to deal with a situation that you're not necessarily sure how to deal with. As a salesperson, a lot of people think our job out there is to go out there and tell our prospects whatever they want to hear in order to get the business. I would stand that on its head, and I would say to you that your job is to go out there and give your prospects factual information so that they can make an honest decision for themselves. At the end of the day, if you've done your job right, if you have the relationship in place, if you've done all the other steps up until this point, your prospect doesn't love you and hate everybody else. So let's dispel that myth. Really what it is your prospect should like you just a little bit more than they like everybody else. How do you get to that point? Well, when you're dealing with expectations, you've got to show that you care. You've got to show that you're interested. Expectations is also a great indicator of pain from the previous vendor, or if it's a new building or a new business, something that makes the individual who is the decision maker uncomfortable. Okay, so for example, if your prospect is telling you, make sure you clean the stairs, that should tell you that that prospect either has had some level of discomfort with the stairs previously, or somebody that works within the organization and deals with that person on a day-to-day basis has a problem with the way the stairs are, and that person means enough to the decision maker that they're now going to tell you as the service provider to make sure that those stairs are clean. When managing the expectation from the client, you're also going to find sometimes that the expectations might be slightly unreasonable. Your clients may be asking you to do things that you know are above and beyond what would be beyond our company safety and operation parameters. You've got to have an honest conversation with the prospect about that. Your prospect is always going to be an expert in their business, in their world. They know everything about it. In our world, in building maintenance and programs like this, you're the expert. You have to be the person who is not only persuading them that you're the person that they should be dealing with, but also educating them as they go along. They don't understand our world any more than you're going to understand theirs. So a great example would be if you walked into, say, the State Capitol building down on Washington Avenue in Albany. When you walk into that building, you're going to see some very specific things. You're going to see a lot of natural stone. You're going to see a lot of wear pattern in the natural stone. You're going to see areas that need to be improved the second that you walk in the door. But that doesn't mean that you know how to run New York State. Just because you can see what's going on with the building doesn't mean that you can walk in there and suddenly you know their jobs better than they do. And the same is true for you. Bundling the last two topics in terms of budgets and what the expectations are going to be, when you put those two together, it really should be a collaborative effort on your part and the prospect's part to both manage the budget and the expectations. That's a very important thing. And the reason why that's an important thing is your prospect's never going to tell themselves that they were wrong. So if your prospect is having the idea then it's going to be the best idea that that prospect has ever heard. And it's not because your prospect is egotistical, and it's not because your prospect is just trying to be right, but your prospect knows and understands the personalities and the conduits of what's going on in that building better than you do. So don't let your ego play a role in that. And so with the expectations, there's going to be quality expectations, there's going to be spec expectations. Your job is to meet both. Your job is to make sure that you're giving your prospect the proper reassurances that you're going to be able to manage their quality expectations. That's going to be big because you're standing there. If you're standing there, that means somebody else is going, right? Sometimes even DCS is in that position where there's another vendor standing there having a conversation on one of our accounts. When that happens, we have to be big enough to be able to absorb what took place, learn from it, and then correct that error going forward. You got to be upfront with your prospects about that. If your prospect has the brains God gave a chicken, your prospect's going to be asking you, what other complaints have you had? What issues do you have? Your best policy is always going to be just be honest. Tell them what the corrective actions that we took are and why that won't be a problem in their facility. You can always draw it back as to your failures of the past are the lessons of today. So you can always draw upon that experience to give your prospect the reassurances that that's not going to be an issue in their facility on the quality side. On the specification piece, you've got to be very, very careful that you're not what I call overpromise and underdeliver. You want to be the exact opposite. You want to underpromise and overdeliver. If you're underpromising and over-delivering, you're going to be a hero every single time. If you under-deliver and overpromise, you're going to be the guy that's causing the pain. So keep that in the back of your head as you're moving forward through this process. The expectation piece, you're getting towards the close. If they're talking about what the expectations of your company is going to be, then you've got to start looking at the account as though you're going to be doing the account and treating it as such. The more you adopt the attitude and behavior of the current vendor, the more you're going to be seen as the current vendor. And the more you can adopt being the individual that your prospect is coming to solve their issues, the better relationship you're going to have, the more longer term relationship that you're going to have. Remember, as we talked about earlier, everything comes down to habits. If your prospect is in the habit of calling you to solve their issues, it's very difficult for somebody to change that habit. That's what you're looking for. So in terms of your expectations, again, always make sure you're addressing the quality issues that led you to be standing there in the first place. But when your prospect starts discussing with you the specifications and what they expect done, that's where you've got to not be talking, you've got to be listening, you've got to be sure that you can deliver on what you're promising. Once you're sure of that, go for the close. Hi, welcome back to the final chapter of the Dago Cleaning Systems sales training video and introduction to DCS. And our last topic today, we're going to talk about behaviors. Behaviors can be very tricky. Behaviors can be difficult for you to read. And as the trained salesperson, that same your behavior can also be very difficult for your prospect to read. So let's spend a minute and talk about body language. If I was to draw a pie chart for you, you would and break out the way human beings communicate, you would find some very interesting things. So 7% of the way human beings communicate is words. The words that you use, the conversations that you have. You've probably heard many times, it's not so much what you said, it's how you said it. Your tone is 38% of the way that you communicate with other human beings, leaving your body language to be 55% of the way you're communicating. Be cognizant of that. If your body language is uncomfortable, if you're nervous, if you're in any way not 100% involved in the situation that you're in the conversation that you're having at the time, your prospect is going to pick up on it. However, your prospect isn't going to go, wow, this salesperson's really nervous. Your prospect isn't going to say, wow, this salesperson is really inexperienced. No, what your prospect is going to pick up on in those insecurities is that you're being dishonest or there's something about you that is rubbing them the wrong way, And from a psychological standpoint of view, if it's a body language issue, they may not even understand why. I'll give you a great example of that is, how many times have you sat down next to somebody or had a conversation with them and had an instant discomfort or an instant dislike for that individual? That individual, there's something about the way their body language or their tone that is making you feel that way. Your prospects can pick up on that as well. No matter what we do, no matter what we're doing in business, no matter what your education level is, no matter where you come from, these principles are universal. So let's talk a little bit about personality types and how to communicate with each. So you heard me earlier, we talked about steady relators and cautious thinkers. Steady relators and cautious thinkers are very much driven by details. Everything with them is very much about the building blocks of how you get to the conclusion. So with a steady relator, we get that term because the steady relator is somebody that doesn't like to rock the boat. They're never going to confront you directly. What they're going to do is they're going to be very standoffish in your meeting. They're going to find the most benign way and unconfrontational way to end the meeting as quickly as possible. And then as soon as you walk out of that room, that person is going to cut you to shreds. This is the person that sits in your office that will never engage anybody directly, but can't wait to sort of reverse engage the moment that you're not in the room. This doesn't make them cowards. It doesn't make them not nice people. It just makes their personality set difficult. And you need to have your antenna up for that, because when you notice that, there's something that you're doing in either your tone or body language usually that is causing that person to feel that way. Cautious thinkers are exactly what you would think it would mean based on the name. Very detail oriented. This is the person who will spend 20 minutes telling you that they don't have 10 minutes. This is the person who, when you're asking them what they have for breakfast, they will tell you every single mind-numbing detail about their breakfast. I had eggs, but before I cracked the eggs, I had to get the pan out. When I got the pan out, there was another pan in it, so I had to take the other pan out, and then I put it on the stove, and then I had to preheat the stove, and then I cracked my eggs, and I threw the shells away. You get where I'm going with this. If you're not a cautious thinker and you're not a steady relator, that type of communication is going to make you crazy. Dominance. Okay, a dominant personality is one that is the exact opposite of the previous two that we just discussed. A dominant personality doesn't care about the details. All they care about is the conclusion. They're not going to make you tell you how you're getting to the conclusion, but what they will do is they will hold you unequivocally to every promise that you make. A dominant personality is not an individual that you want to drop the ball with, because when you drop a ball with that person, they're going to call you out from without and from within. They are going to make immediate changes. They make fast decisions. If you've done something that they're not happy with, you might find out that you're fired before you even got the complaint phone call. Which leads us to influencers. Influencers are very much good time Charlies, okay? Just like your cautious thinker and your steady relator can share personality traits, so can your influencer and your dominant. Your influencer is very much a good time Charlie. However, they're also chameleons, okay? They can be a dominant and they don't feel bad about it, even though they'd rather not be. They can be. When you get an influencer to go to his dominant traits, game's over. You've already lost. You'll never get that person back. That doesn't make them unreasonable. It's just who they are. So your influencers are the guy that you're trying to talk about your expectations and specifications at the current facility, and all they want to talk about is their vacation that they just got back from. And everything with them is walking around shaking hands and saying hi to everybody while they're supposed to be meeting with you. Recognize that that person is an individual. That is not a slight towards you. That is not them telling you that your time is not worth as much as theirs. It's just the way that they're naturally hardwired. You yourself as the salesperson, somewhere in those four personality sets, identify with those individuals. So as you're communicating, the best thing that you can do as a salesperson is be who you're communicating to. If you're talking to a dominant, pay attention to their tone, pay attention to their speech patterns. You're going to find that it's very short, quick, they make quick decisions, and they don't really want to get mired down in the details. So if you're talking to a cautious thinker, you're going to find the pattern to be slower, to be a little bit more even-toned, to be very inquisitive. You've got to match and mirror that individual. Old saying in the sales world, To sell Jack Jones what Jack Jones buys, you have to see Jack Jones through Jack Jones' eyes. We all love ourselves. We're comfortable with ourselves. And if you can be more like the individual than the last guy, then you've probably got a really good shot at getting the business. But let's talk about dress, and let's talk about how to act. I'm going to get a little bit rudimentary here. Okay, if you're going out on a sales call and your pants are not around your waist, you're probably going to strike out. If you're going to go in there and use street slang instead of speaking professionally and coming across as an individual who knows what you're talking about, you're probably not going to get the account, and you're not going to be taken seriously. If you pull in and to your prospect, and you got your windows down and you got your music blaring and the bass is thumping the windows out of the building, you're probably not going to be taken seriously as a business person. Your job here is to be professional. Your job here is not to be stylish. Your job here is not to end up on MTV Cribs. Your job is to be a business person, someone who can be relied on by other business people. If you have any questions about that at all, take a look around at people that you consider to be successful. Take a look around at the individuals that you'll be meeting with and see if they dress in a manner that is less than professional, if they speak in a manner that is less than professional, if they carry themselves in a manner that is less than professional. It would be very difficult for you to find a prospect that behaves in such a manner. Therefore, as we talked about earlier, match and mirror, you as the salesperson have to project the same intelligence, the same maturity, and the same professionalism. Okay? So keep those three at the top of your list in terms of how should you dress, how should you act, and how should you present yourself. You present yourself as an intelligent, professional, mature. Where do you find clients? Kind of a big one for all of the stuff that we're talking about. Sometimes you can do cold calls. I like cold calls because I think it gets us to keep our edge, gets us to think fast on our feet. But that's not the only way to go. You're going to want to go to business events. You're going to want to go to Chamber of Commerce events. You're going to want to go to building maintenance events, i.e. BOMA and things like that. You're going to want to get to know the individuals who are responsible for running these buildings on a day-to-day basis. I'll go back again and use Washington Avenue at the State Building down there. Washington Avenue at the State Capitol has 111. They have an entire building staff. You'll never have Senator Schumer come down and make a decision about the janitorial or building projects. There are building managers who are responsible for that. Those are the people you want to get to know. Those are the people that you want to be calling you because they have questions when they're looking for advice, so on and so forth. Business journals, new businesses opening. You want to keep an eye on those. You want to make sure, because if I'm opening a business tomorrow, what does that tell you? I'm probably going to need a night cleaner. I'm probably going to need some kind of service that DCS provides that you should be talking to them about. Your city halls. You can always go to the city hall and you can find out who's applied for a business permit. You can get that information in about a week. Anybody that's applying for building permits or business permits is obviously going to be somebody that is opening a business or building a business in your area. If they're building a business, that's a great opportunity for what DCS does best, which is post-construction cleanup. If they are going to be opening a business, that's a great opportunity for what DCS does best, which is ongoing janitorial maintenance of said building and making sure that the business looks as professional and well-kept as the individuals running it. What's going to separate you in this industry is going to be very much your ability to recognize that the shape of the building and the surrounding is a direct representation of the individuals who inhabit the office space or the building on a daily basis. The more you help that prospect understand that you see that, the more you stop looking at it saying, who's the janitor? Think about that. Who's the janitor? You'll never call somebody a janitor again. If you truly understand it, that individual suddenly becomes a technician. And these are ideas and thoughts that you need to keep between your ears, because you need to have a healthy respect for the individuals who will fulfill the promises that you as a salesperson will make. And you need to have a healthy respect for the view of the individuals that you're going to be working for, i.e. your clients. When your clients are bringing you on board, they're bringing on a partner. When you're sending a team there and you're asking Derek and Michelle and the rest of the team here to go down there and fulfill your promises, you're asking a team of professionals. But I can tell you personally that here at DCS, we've taken a lot of time and energy to train these individuals. It seems like a simple task. It seems like it's something rudimentary that most people should be able to do. However, building the right habits in terms of quality and professionalism within the individuals who will execute the promises that you will make is no easy task. It's no more of an easy task than it is for you yourself to go out, uncover that prospect, and close business.